sometimes I think, I feel that people say it's a little, it's an honor to be here, honor to meet, but I feel totally honored, and I feel overwhelmed and in awe of you people. Many of you I haven't met before. Normally, I know the people I'm interviewing in Amplify Alaska. I do a lot of research. We meet a couple of times, and we create kind of a show. So we're all a little bit out of the fish out of water. Everything is a little bit off from what it normally is, but that's good. Are you different now from 2 hours ago? You now have a governor's award?
Not so much being different, but to get a better perspective of the humanities and the arts. I think this is a wonderful program that will, inspire me for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And this is Edward Thomas who's saying this. Can we hear from Anna as well?
I think it was, to me it was icing on the cake after teaching 50 years.
Yeah. Woo.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just beginning, and I'm like sitting amongst all of these legends. And it doesn't make me feel different. It just makes me feel like this is the work that I need to do and continue to do for our people.
I feel like that this is a great public recognition of all the grassroots building that I've been doing in the music community here for the last 30 years. And it's a real honor to have that happen and broadcast that to a larger community.
Hi, my name is Pedro Garcia Quintana. I'm from Puerto Rico, but it's been 10 years here in Alaska, and with this award that it was made for, the leadership of Jenny Moore and the art studio, it really opened up a fire inside of me just to be part of something that hasn't really have to do with what's happening in my island, but Alaskans are so warm and kind, and they really reach into your soul. And for me, being part of this and knowing all of these new people, it really makes me enjoy the part of wanting to communicate and connecting. So I feel very honored to be here.
When you asked that question, the first thing I thought is I do feel different because I was so nervous about my speech that I couldn't concentrate, and now I'm concentrating. Seriously, I actually don't feel any different because I know how beautiful the studio is already, but I'm happy that other people are seeing that too.
And Heather, you didn't get an award today. You got an award 2 years ago, 3 years? Heather Lende, who is a state laureate writer and has received numerous awards during COVID. You've been sitting in Haines receiving awards.
You live long
Can you
enough.
feel them? Can you feel any of them?
I feel really grateful to be here in person with this gathering. I think when all you do is hear the news, or you're from far away and you're wondering what's going on, not only in the world, but even in Alaska. And then today it was just so inspiring. There's so much hope and promise and joy and really good things that are happening within the arts and humanities community that it's just really an honor to be part of it. And now I feel, if I'm the writer laureate, I feel like I have sort of a purpose now to help tell this story. And it's a really good story, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I wanted to pick up on what Marjorie just said about you're here with legend and you feel young. I was looking through the program before this, when I was prepping for this too, and thinking, what's that young gal doing with all these mature people?
I didn't mean to see me feel old or anything, sorry.
Are you an old soul?
I didn't mean for it to sound like that. Like a goat. You guys know the word GOAT?
Yeah.
The acronym, greatest of all time.
We're familiar.
You guys are the greatest of all time.
Yeah, and you're being so. You're probably not the youngest recipient of the award, but it is noticeable that most people have lived for quite a while longer than you. Yeah. And so, in terms of the energy that you're bringing, it's tangible that you're bringing a broad talent, and you're dedicated with your heart and soul to the work that you're doing, and you're also kind of maybe a product. This is not a product, but the fact that you're here is you're on the shoulders of a lot of work that's been done in your culture, and I wondered if you.
I am here at the request of our elders.
Yeah.
they say we need somebody. We need someone to learn our culture, learn our language, and teach it to our youth. We can't do it anymore. We have the knowledge. We are happy to share it with you, but we don't have the energy or the capacity to run immersion schools for Head Start, kindergarten-aged children. And so ultimately, I was like, if not me, who else? And so when I was a high school student, I remember thinking, if not me, who else? And so that became my life journey to learn all of these things that I needed and just share it without any reason other than just to share and make sure that our knowledge was passed down from the generation to the generation to the generation that was taught on to me by my elders. And so honestly, I couldn't be here without these people, the GOATs, the greatest of all times of our generations, the legends not being old but yet young, youthful elders,
Yeah.
you know, I say lightly.
Let's hear it from the goat to your right.
I know, she is the GOAT. Oh my
She's
God.
the GOAT.
I am so honored to be sitting next to her. She has been my role model since I was a young child. She probably doesn't know this, but man, when the Yafron went into service, I was in high school, and I remember I was little, and she was a little bit younger at the time. Still a GOAT. Sorry. And it made me feel so like empowered to learn my language, to continue on, to open a school that was just in our language. So I'm just so honored to be next to you. Oh my gosh.
And I know she's going to move forward. But I want to tell her 54 years ago, maybe 55 years ago, I told my mom I was going to college. She looked me straight in the eye and said, Ayapon, there's two things I want you to remember. Number one, don't forget your roots. Don't forget your self-identity. No matter what you do, you're not going to, become something else. Number two, don't ever forget your Yupik language. It was given to you. It's your job to keep it and pass it on. Kuyana.
Thank you. Edward Thomas, you are also an educator, amongst many things, but I just don't even know where to start with the different things. But as a politician, as a maker things happener in a big time, what was your route? What was the thing that started you? Was it someone telling you, giving you some advice and saying, or did you have an epiphany? It sounds to me like you've been going through a lot of different developments, and you've been a fisherman, and you've been your education. You got degrees in all kinds of different things. You're a scientist. You're an educator. Lots of different things. And what sort of what's the starting point for you to become an educator?
I was a commercial fisherman at first, for the first 25 years of my career. And most inspiring thing is having a poor fishing season. But other than that, I went to school actually to become a basketball coach. I was a physical ed major when I first went back to college. And when I came back home, I realized that so many of our programs are run without our own people being involved in them. And so I decided I better get myself involved before I can preach to someone else. And that was helpful to me because as you communicate with people who have not been involved but are kind of interested, you're going to find that the communication between the two of you ends up growing the spirit in both of you as opposed to just one or the other. And so I think over time I found that, yes, there's a lot of politics in the Native community, but there's also a lot of opportunity to grow as a person, to acquaint yourself with your culture, as well as with the dominant society. And I think that those kinds of things are really inspiring to me, that as you learn not only your own culture, the cultures of others, and develop a path of your own, and getting a lot of good guidance from people that have been there throughout my education and political career.
I wanted to ask Jennifer here and Pedro about what connected you to your work. There's two kind of areas in the work. You're working with art, and you're also working with people. And people look at the work that you do, I think, and go, well, that's a little different from running a regular art studio, or that's a little different from running a support, a supportive resource for people who maybe need a little bit different help than the majority of the population. And so can you say a little bit about just personally your story and getting into the work that you have gotten into?
Yeah, absolutely. When I graduated from college, I thought I was on the path to be a social worker. Worked with developmentally disabled adults for most of my first career. But I always had a love for art and found that the population I was working with was so amazingly talented, but nobody was looking at them. And I was like, if I'm not going to do it, who's going to do it, right? So I went to get my master's. I was thinking of becoming a counselor and doing therapy. And in the midst of my master's, I realized I didn't actually want to do one-on-one therapy. I wanted to do something through the arts. And so I pitched this idea to Hope Community Resources and said, can we build a studio? And by the grace of God, they believed in me for a moment. And I ran with it. And the studio's been there for 12 years now. We started out with 4 artists, and we have 59 now on a regular basis. So they're just an underserved population that nobody really thinks can create beautiful things, but they create some of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Yeah, and you're sitting there holding a yellow rose, which is a very beautiful creation, and you say you can't let go of it. What about yourself?
Oh boy. Well, for me, this experience and meeting Jenny and being able to be part of the structure that she created with this program that she helped me follow, it has to do with the communication that he was talking about joining and being there with the person and creating that language. And Jenny always gave me the tools that I needed to find a way to connect with people and learn that there is no wrong way to do things. There's just different ways, and to honor that and to stimulate that. And for me, being able to see that joy that was already there and celebrate it, created a space where we could all grow together and just mass produce this art that is beautiful. And it just comes from a structure that Jenny created with drawings that we would expand in wood and just make different arts that were just so bright and attractive. But they all come from them. And then the collaborative process that she created is what unites us. And we all celebrate every single piece because everyone is part of it.
Heather. You can pass the mic to Heather. I wanted to, maybe you have something else you want to say, but I wanted to ask you, what story are you writing right now? Is it secret?
That's a hard one to write. I'm actually, what I'm working on is I'm trying to shape a whole book out of stories about how important it is to do just what we're doing here, and it's sort of a wonky word, but to rebuild social capital after the COVID time and after the isolation and even after the trauma of the last few years on all different levels of our society and culture, and how important that is. And I heard something that Melissa said today, about the importance of gathering in person, and I keep coming back to that. And also, someone who was sitting at my table during that opening speech leaned over, a native Alaskan from Haines, it's a friend of mine, and said, this is maybe the reason why the colonization stopped the gatherings. They stopped the gatherings for song and dance and food and reciprocity that were happening, because it's so powerful when people can't gather. And when you control the venues where we communicate, bad things happen to society and cultures. and I think we're seeing that. So I don't write that way. I write in stories, but so stories about going back to weddings or back to basketball games. One that I think of last winter when we were first able to go back in the gym in Haines. That's a big part of culture in Southeast Alaska. And just walking in and sitting down next to somebody that you'd seen on the local social media saying pretty horrible things about some group or some other group, and then sitting down there and thinking, they don't like me and I don't really like them, but what are we going to talk about? Not what's on social media. It was, boy, how much snow was on your roof, and did you see that shed that collapsed, and are you guys doing okay over there? And suddenly there's a communication that's happening that's way outside of the things that I don't know, the newspapers or I don't mean that in a negative way about papers, but the things that are in the news all the time tend to divide us, and the things that we do together tend to unite us in a way of our common
We all
commonality.
agree about that.
And we all do.
I understand why it's like that.
But
anyway.
it was broken. Something broke, and now fixing it involves face-to-face rather than FaceTime and rather than Zoom. As much as that helped bridge the gap, I think it's really important. So that's what that's the stuff that rolls around in my head when I go to write down something.
My last question for anyone who wants to say is really, what is it that needs to happen now? And that's a big question, but it could be in your field, it can be in the world, it can be in your family, it can be in the place you live. What is it that needs to happen?
Well, in continuation of what Heather was saying, is that we need more events where we gather and share, because that establishes this human contact. All people need to hang out with each other. And when we get into FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, it's like you're in your little, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. You're sitting behind the curtain talking to somebody, and you can make it whatever you want to make it. So we really need to gather as far as people to develop peaceful relationships with each other as opposed to being separated. And so I think it's all the stuff that we do is really important in getting people together.
Yeah, thank you. Marjorie, what do you think? What is it we need right now? What is it that you're working on, or what's your space that you're filling?
Honestly, we just need to reinstill all of the programming that invites everybody, no matter where they're from, non-native, indigenous, it doesn't matter, opportunities for them to come and learn whatever they want, the skills of learning how to make a kayak or learning how to go and pick and forage onto the land so that they can sustain themselves in a healthy way. All these things, it's a matter of opportunity. And also, we just got to hold ourselves accountable. I think right now, we live in a time of chaos and uncertainty, and, holding ourselves accountable for, things that just quite aren't in our power, but yet still are. Like, we are the bystanders to that, and trying to not just be the bystanders, but an activator of change. And so that's kind of what I feel like needs to happen. So me, as an activator of change, I choose to try and speak my language as much as I can in front of my daughter. I choose to name my daughter an Inupiaq name and not an English name. I choose to, stand up against missing and murdered Indigenous women. I choose to support these movements of LGBTQI+. And so that's kind of what I think needs to happen now. For us to move together and move in a forward motion together.
Yeah, together. Edward Thomas.
I think that one of the most important things that we can do in humanities and the arts is to incorporate a lot of our cultural activities into the school curriculum, particularly in urban settings. When I was the director of Indian education in Ketchikan, we did not even have one language or culture class in any school. And by the end of the first year, we had Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian in one school. And we didn't just offer it to natives, we offered it to anybody in that particular class. And believe it or not, many of the non-native children learned those languages as good and sometimes even better than some of our traditional natives. And they took it home. And when you look at what's happening nationwide, you see division as opposed to coming together, and that's because of misunderstandings, that people don't really embrace somebody else's point of view. I'd like to jazz up the Tlingit culture, listening to the jazz man.
I'd like to clink up the jazz culture, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then
So
there are
I
people
can-
who are doing that.
Yeah,
Right?
like embrace some of what he's saying about jazz and incorporate it into the curriculum of teaching Tlingit language, or some of how to make a totem and make the story make sense to somebody else other than myself. And I think that those are the kind of things that I think the state of Alaska can take the leadership role in with the help of Alaska's arts and humanities. I just think there's so much opportunity by listening to what other people had to say, and I feel that there's a good opportunity here.
Yeah, thank you. Did you have also something you wanted to say, and then I wanted to give it to Ayaprun at the end?
Absolutely. I think during COVID, one of the things that happened for the folks that we support, their communication sometimes has a lot to do with the expression on your face. And so even when we came back in person, people were having a really tough time with masks on to know what you were saying or how you were saying it. And so for me, the next step for us is really to make those connections back, because they were kind of lost, even when we were back in person for a while. And now that we don't have masks on, there's smiles and we're reading people's faces and communicating better. So for me, it's really bringing people back together to make that connection that's not shadowed by anything else, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. I would like Ayaprun to tell us also what you think that we need. You've been around giving us things we need. What do we need?
Last September, I was invited to be a guest speaker at our Association of Village Council Presidents, and my big concern was the changes in our villages. I mean, the corruption. I'm worried about our young people. I told all the leaders, whenever something happens in the village, guess what we do? We point fingers. Well, that child comes from a dyslexic family. There's substance abuse. And I said, no, you don't do that. You point fingers at yourself. We're the ones who are supposed to help raise the community. We're the ones who are supposed to help our children. So I asked all the leaders, wouldn't it be nice if the school adopted some of our systems, like our teaching of our Yupik way of life, Tlingit way of life, adopt the values, make sure that children know, because our young parents need parenting skills. They're not being talked to like we were in the 50s or 40s. So that's what our school is doing now, is, teaching our children, hunting for moose. We're serving moose and a lot of fish. We're picking berries, but we're tying all that into our curriculum. So I'd like to invite, any of you to come see what's going on. And of course, you can come anytime.
We're all coming. We're all coming. Thank you so much. Any final words from anyone? Otherwise, yes, you want to. I see everybody wants to say something.
If elected, I'll balance the national budget in 2 years.
I want to thank you so much, John, Marjorie, Ayaprun, Edward, Heather, and Jennifer, and Pedro, myself, Yngvil, and I want to thank everyone who's been helping with Amplify Alaska. That's Frostline Studios. Now, thank you for being great role models and wonderful energy. Thank you very much.